Morning, everybody. I've been watching how the reporting on the Sri Lankan church Easter bombings has gone, and it's interesting how it's been rolled out. And comparing that to the Christchurch reporting across the world, I mean, there's a comparison to be made, and it's interesting what got more attention and what the focus was on. And I'm not going to get into that because a lot of people have been talking about that. A lot of people have been jarred out of their slumber specifically because of how quickly this has kind of disappeared from the front page. And it's a big deal. Make no mistake. Bombing a church on Easter is a big deal. And at first, this is the first article that came out about this for CBC, I believe, first post on April 21st. Yeah. And this is the one that I read and reported on in my show on that day on Easter. And I wanted to show you specifically who they tried to lay the blame at. They kind of say no claim of responsibility, and then give the breakdown of the religious makeup of the country, and they kind of try and lay blame everywhere but Islam. It's really kind of strange. I don't know why, but anyway, and it's interesting for two reasons. One, they knew this attack was coming. They were told on April 11th. There's a communication, and we're going to look at it, from April 11th, saying this specific attack with this Islamic group might happen. So the fact that CBC, and I don't know if CBC knew this, but the government knew this, and their government, I mean, the Sri Lankan government, and the way the things rolled out very slowly, very reminiscent of if we can put time between the incident and that people finding out it was a radicalized person or terrorism or whatever, then it doesn't look as bad, or for whatever reason the public doesn't care as much. It's very strange, but that's what happens. Okay, here's the article. And the title of the article is Easter Sunday Bomb Attacks Kill More Than 200 at Sri Lankan Churches and Hotels. And the headline is, or subheadline that I'm reading is, no claim of responsibility. There were no immediate claims of responsibility for the attacks in a country which was at war for decades with Tamil separatists until 2009, a time when bomb blasts in the capital were common. Okay, so it might be Tamils, right? Tamil separatists. Maybe they did it, except probably not, because they collapsed in 2009. Back to the article. Local Christian groups have said they faced increasing intimidation from some extremist Buddhist monks in recent years. Last year, there were clashes between a majority Sinhalese Buddhist community and minority Muslims, with some hardline Buddhist groups accusing Muslims of forcing people to convert to Islam. Okay, I remember reading about this, but make no mistake, the paper is saying maybe it's the hardline Buddhist monks. Maybe that's who did this. Not the Islam people, not the Islamic Muslims. No. It was the evil Buddhist monks. But I remember reading about this last year and thinking to myself, if Buddhist monks are arming themselves and saying those guys are not being nice or whatever, if the Buddhist monks are going that far, then probably it's not the Buddhist monks. In just my opinion. Here's the religious breakdown of Sri Lanka. Out of Sri Lanka's total population of around 22 million people, 70% are Buddhist, 12.6% are Hindu, 9.7% Muslim, and 7.6% Christian, according to the country's 2012 census. In a sign that the attacks on the 3 churches and 4 hotels could lead to communal violence, police reported on Sunday night that there had been a petrol bomb attack on a mosque in the northwestern district of Putnam, sorry if I've got that wrong, and arson attacks on 2 shops owned by Muslims in the western district of Kaltara, sorry if I've got that wrong. And I find that interesting. Like, don't worry about that church bombing on Easter, that coordinated churches, 3 churches and multiple hotels. Don't worry about that because there was a petrol bomb and arson attacks on shops owned by Muslims. So it couldn't have been Muslims. What? What kind of insane reporting is this? Okay, back to the article. Government had, quote, prior information. And this is the part that really is kind of the linchpin here. They knew about this. They knew this was coming. Back to the article. The government has acknowledged that it had, quote, prior information of attacks on churches involving a little-known local Islamist group, but didn't do enough about it. Most of the deadly attacks in the past in Sri Lanka were carried out by the Liberation of Tigers of Tamil Eelam, LTTE, which ran a military campaign for separate Tamil homeland in the northern and eastern provinces of the island nation for nearly 30 years. The Tamil movement collapsed in 2009 after the Sri Lankan army killed its supreme leader, Prabhakaran. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong, but I wanted to highlight that. There's no way that this was carried out by the group that they're saying, because they were destroyed. It's insane. Back to the article. Here is I can't say this person's name, but he's Sri Lankan's defense minister. He described what happens as an unfortunate terrorist incident and suggests the explosions were the work of religious extremists. Yeah, because you know that they're the work of religious extremists. Cardinal Malcolm Radnith urged Sri Lanka's government to launch a very impartial, strong inquiry and punish those responsible mercilessly because only animals behave like that. And the defense minister acknowledges that the government had some, quote, prior information of the attack, though ministers were not told. He said that there wasn't adequate response and that there needed to be an inquiry into how the information was used. He also said the government needs to look at the international links of a local militant group. And this is the same militant group that I'm going to talk about right now. And that militant group are National Tawhid Jamal. And this is an Islamic group and potentially with ties to ISIS. So this is reported yesterday, April 22nd. And it's interesting that right away, the CBC is trying to deflect. It's not these people. And the government, the Sri Lankan government, knows, yes, it is. So here's BBC reporting. A previously little-known group called the National Tawhid Jamal, NTJ, is being accused of having carried out the Easter Sunday attacks in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan officials pinned the blame on the NTJ at a news conference on Monday. However, neither NTJ nor any other group has admitted carrying out the wave of bombings which tore through the island, killing almost 300 people. But still, the allegations raises the question, what is the NTJ? So these are unproven allegations, but again, things tie together, right? Like there is evidence that this group is connected. Okay, origins. Until Monday, when the Sri Lankan government spokesman mentioned its name, very few people had ever heard of the NTJ. The group is believed to have splintered off from another hardline Islamist group in the country, the Sri Lankan Tawhid Jamal, SLTJ, which while still relatively unknown, the SLTJ is a bit more established. Its secretary, Abdul Razik, was arrested in 2016 for inciting hatred against Buddhists. He later issued an apology. Aww. Some reports have also linked the NTJ to a spate of vandalism last December that targeted Buddhist temples in Malanala, sorry if I've got that wrong, central Sri Lanka. The faces of Buddhist statues that were on display outside the temples were attacked. But the NTJ is an extremist fringe group with an already small religious minority. Only 9.7% of Sri Lanka's population of about 21 million are Muslim. Its social media presence is sparse too, although it has a Facebook page. It is only updated every few weeks or so. The NTJ Twitter feed hasn't updated since March 2018. I wonder if they started posting, conservative values, if they'd have that Facebook page removed. If they said, we agree with Donald Trump, or any conservative thing, they probably have that taken right down. But, if you're a terrorist group, an Islamic terrorist group, targeting people and committing vandalism and destroying Buddhist statues, whatever, man, you post whatever you want. Hashtag free speech. What the? My goodness. Back to the article. The group's website is also offline, although it's not clear if it was taken down before or after Sunday's attacks. Links to the attacks. Government spokesman Rashida Senather, no, that's wrong, and I'm not going to try it again. So the spokesperson told reporters in Colombo on Monday that there had been, quote, several warnings from foreign intelligence agencies about the impending attacks. This isn't the only claim that officials had been alerted. Sri Lankan telecommunications minister Fernando tweeted a document that was supposedly sent by Sri Lankan police chief earlier this month. The document explicitly names the NTJ as well as a warning that the group was planning to attack churches and the Indian High Commission. The document also names Mohammed Zaharan, the group's leader. And I'm going to show you, here's the tweet. And I'm not going to read this out, but links in the description if you want to read it. And here's a link to the actual document that it's in another language. I can't read it. I can't verify that it is what they say it is, but this is what the news is talking about. And this is, well, here it is, right? This is the 11th of April and whatever. It matches up. So if they knew about this and they knew who was going to commit this atrocity, could they have stopped it maybe? Should they have acted? Should they have moved? Should they have warned people? Back to the article. Alan Keenan, Sri Lankan director for the International Crisis Group think tank, also told BBC 5 Live that the NTJ, quote, appears to be the same group as those behind the Manal vandalism. I think that I already said that. He added, the police have already arrested a group of young men who are said to have been the students of a preacher who's named in the intelligence document that came out on Sunday. But given how small the NTJ are, officials suspect that it wasn't acting alone. Quote, we don't see that any one small organization in this country can do all that. Mr. The spokesman said, "We are now investigating the international support for them and their other links, how they produced the suicide bombers here, and how they produce bombs like this." And while not naming the NTJ directly, the Sri Lankan president office echoed this belief that whichever group was behind the attacks had help from abroad. Quote, "The intelligence sections have reported that there are international terror groups which are behind the local terrorists," a statement from President Sincera said. "International assistance will be sought to combat them." Yes, quite. And it's interesting. That's the original. That's where I found the document. Here's a Yahoo News article, and I wanted to highlight this, but, well, I'm going to skip it for now. I just wanted to show you. No, I'll highlight this. Okay, so here's the Yahoo News article. This was reported this morning, but within the article, in my opinion, there's conflicting reports. Okay, so, and maybe not. Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. Sri Lanka bomb attacks were revenge for New Zealand mosque killings, minister. Okay, so this is reported today. Colombo, and this is by Reuters, not Yahoo News, but Yahoo News is the station that I found it on. Devastating Easter bombings in Sri Lanka were retaliation for recently deadly attacks on mosques in New Zealand, a Sri Lankan official said on Tuesday, adding that 2 domestic Islamist groups were believed to have been behind Sunday's blasts. No group has claimed responsibility for the coordinated attacks, which officials said were carried out by at least 7 suicide bombers on 3 churches and 4 hotels. The toll rose to 321 dead, with about 500 wounded. Quote, "The initial investigation has revealed that it was in retaliation for the New Zealand mosque attack," Junior Minister for Defense told Parliament. He did not elaborate on why authorities believe that there was a link to the killing of 50 people at 2 mosques in the New Zealand city of Christchurch during Friday prayers on March 15th. A lone gunman carried out those attacks. The minister said the 2 Sri Lankan Islamist groups, the National Tawhid Jamaat and, I'm not going to try that one, sorry, were responsible for the blast early Sunday during Easter service and as high-end hotels served breakfast. U.S. intelligence sources said the attacks carried some of the hallmarks of Islamic State militant group, although they were cautious because it had not claimed responsibility. Islamic State is usually quick to claim responsibility for or links to attacks against foreign targets or religious groups, whether it was involved or not, they said. Earlier on Tuesday, Sri Lanka government and military sources said a Syrian had been detained among 40 people being questioned over the bombs. He was arrested after interrogation of local suspects, one of the sources said, referring to the unidentified Syrian. Okay, and so they're repeatedly saying no one's claimed responsibility, and ISIS hasn't said that they've claimed responsibility, but the New York Times is reporting this morning that, yeah, ISIS has claimed responsibility. But of course, they cast doubt on that because, who could believe ISIS? They can't do this. Sure. ABC News is reporting. Sorry, I said New York Times, but this is ABC. New York Times is also reporting this. I used ABC. ISIS claims responsibility for Sri Lankan Easter bombings that killed over 300. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for a wave of coordinated bombings at churches and high-end hotels across Sri Lanka. The terrorist organization provided no evidence to support the claim, there we go, casting doubt, which was announced in a statement in Arabic published in its Amaq news agency on Tuesday, saying the attacks were among the fighters of the Islamic State, according to a translation by Site Intelligence Group, a company that tracks extremist groups. Sri Lankan Prime Minister, I'm going to fail saying his name, so I'm not going to say it, acknowledged the claim when taking questions from reporters during a press conference in the capital, Colombo. All that we knew earlier is that there were foreign links and that this could not have been done just locally, the Prime Minister said. And there's been training done and coordination, which we have not seen earlier. At least 310 people were killed and another 500 injured Sunday when near simultaneous explosions took place at 8 locations across the island nation, which is located on the southern tip of India. 3 explosions erupted at churches holding Easter services, while 3 others happened at hotels, including some commonly used by Western tourists. Most of the explosions were detonated by suicide bomber, according to the Sri Lankan Defense Ministry. Okay, so with ISIS claiming responsibility, but everybody saying, no, that couldn't be true. We'll continue to look for other links. It was probably white supremacists who were funding these people, right? That'll be the next article. So it's just interesting to watch this all unfold, to see how they treat one disaster in Christchurch and another disaster in Sri Lanka, and how they don't treat them equally, despite knowing a lot more information about one than the other, and still casting doubt and muddying the waters as much as they possibly can, right? It's the Tamils, it's the radicalized Buddhist monks, maybe it's that radicalized Islamic group, but they're only 9.7% of the population. Right. But radicalized people are radicalized people. So, I mean, does it matter what percentage of the population is radicalized? I mean, my goodness. You didn't have that percentage. You had all sorts of religious percentages, but you didn't have the radicalized percentage there. Anyway, I find all of this interesting in our modern world. I think these events should be informing our political conversations. I think these events should be informing the wider conversation between countries as well. What is going on? This is clearly not working. Ms. Merkel, the EU, the United Kingdom, open borders, migration as a right. How does this make sense when this is the result? People hate the West. There are people out there who hate the West. Why are we wholesale importing them in order for them to carry out attacks like this? It is destabilizing. The people in charge understand that, and yet they carry forward. And they tell us noticing it is racist. It's incredible. It's incredible. So, thank you for watching. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful, wonderful day.